And she's here with us today to give us a little insight in how her brain works and how she operates when it comes to research. Please welcome on stage IndiYoung.
Thanks, Miriam. So if we have that glass ceiling that the questioner was asking about, if we are being told what to do, and it's not our job to do strategy, the people up above us don't realize that we have these superpowers. If we're going to subvert systems of power, how many people want to do that? Okay, we need more hands. Come on, come on. Yes, okay. And if we're going to measure in a way that's going to make our stakeholders gasp, we need to talk about thinking styles. So let's dive in. Thinking styles are about a person's approach to a thing that they're trying to address. It's all framed by that thing. So I have on the screen an example of someone who is a caretaker of a parent. The parent has some sort of temporary disability to walk. And so you're going to take care of them because you don't have the money to hire someone to do it. You're maybe going to fly over to their house and live with them for however long it takes to get them back on their feet. That's the frame. That's why it's in this little frame thing. And let me show you a couple of others, just so you have an idea what I mean by framing. There are professional caretakers. They bathe people, they help feed them, they may come 2 or 3 times a day, they may be there all night, they may have several clients or just one. They also take care of people, but that is a different frame. There's yet another way to think of it. What if you're just a professional who happens to work in a house, like a plumber or like a painter, and you show up at this one house and this person has an issue and can't walk suddenly, and you're like, oh, well, I'm gonna, like, before I do the thing I came here for, I'm gonna help them out. It's another frame. It's the same similar thing. We're taking care of someone who temporarily can't walk. But these are different frames. Let's go back to that first one, okay? So let's say your parent had some sort of surgery and you're picking them up at the hospital, and here you are being told by the doctor sort of those instructions. Then you're in the car going home, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've got to go get the physical therapy instructions, we've got to go get the prescription, and then I'm asking mom, what do you want to do? I'm kind of like, I need to make sure that mom is feeling okay about this as we come home. And when we get home, here, as I'm doing all the finances, because mom hasn't caught up on our bills for a little while, how many of us have had to do that? Yes. So in the middle of that, I look over. Mom happens to have this really down look on her face, and I'm like, uh-oh, let's do something about that. Let's call Tio Tico. So here we are FaceTiming, and as a part of this conversation, Tio Tico's all like, yeah, sis, I remember when you were 6 and you had your broken arm. Do you remember that? Oh, yeah, I remember that. Well, do you remember the part where you swelled up like a balloon because you had some sort of drug reaction? I don't remember that. Well, this is the older brother, obviously. You looked horrible. We had to race you to the hospital. And it was some drug that they had given you that started with a C. And the caretaker's going, I think we have a drug that's in our little prescription box here that starts with a C. What do I do? I don't want her to blow up like a balloon, so let me call the doctor. Let me find out what to do. The doctor's all like, it's probably not codeine that caused that sort of a reaction, but just in case, let's go with an acetaminophen. And I feel better as the caretaker. I feel much better handing her that pill. She's not going to blow up. All of those things were things that went through that caretaker's mind. This is the inner thinking. There were some emotional reactions. There's a guiding principle in there. These are the things that are at the center that we can use as a foundation for understanding people in a very different way than how we normally do. We can understand people and then learn how to support people and then measure the value that we're creating for people based on thinking style. So this little candy here, I'm hoping that you've had at some point in your life one of those little round candies. It's like a sphere. You suck on it. It turns different colors as you go through the layers. This is my analogy for how we normally communicate to each other. We often communicate descriptions of things and scene setting and explanations why it's done that way or how it's done. And we might tell each other our opinions and preferences, but we tend not to get into our inner thinking. In many cultures, we never talk about our emotions. And our guiding principles or personal rules are things that we rarely are even, quite aware of ourselves. So if we can do listening sessions with folks to understand at this depth, we can build an understanding of the patterns of thinking that people bring. So here, from that comic that we just went through, are the things that divide out into inner thinking, emotional reactions, and that one personal rule about I'd better call the doctor and find out, right? So what's interesting is that candy is not a person. We're not talking about the center of a person. We're talking about the center of a topic that the person brought up. And a person's going to bring up a lot of topics when we're listening to them. If you listen deeply even to your friends, they're going to bring up a lot of different topics. This works really great with colleagues. You're probably not going to make thinking styles out of your colleagues. However, you need a bigger sample. But each of these has a different topic having to do with that frame of taking care of my parent while they're temporarily unable to walk. Okay? And we're trying to get to the center of each one of these topics and try to understand. So again, we're not trying to get to the center of the person. This is not a personality kind of thing. Myers-Briggs. How many people are excited about Myers-Briggs? Okay, 2 hands. Wow. Okay, she loves Myers-Briggs. I'm sorry, I'm gonna step on your excitement. It's great, but I don't believe in universal models because universal models never apply to everyone in all situations. It's much better to frame them. If we can frame them, then we can get a solid model that actually works, that we can actually test, that can actually bring us a solid way of measuring things over decades. But we have to frame it. We can't just leave it really large and be a universal model like Myers-Briggs, not like horoscopes, right? I mean, horoscopes are fun. There's entertainment. That's what I think of Myers-Briggs. It's horoscopes for business. So anyway, with thinking styles, not only is it framed by that thing the person's trying to address, but it might be framed by the direction they're going to carry themselves. I did a lot of studies for universities that were interested in potential incoming students, and yet the thinking styles that came up were slightly different for different universities because they were attracting different reasons for students to go to college. A technical school, a community college, was attracting different reasons to get out of poverty, maybe make a better life for my children. That's very different than a university with a law school and a medical school. Not completely, but yes. So thinking styles don't apply for the whole person's life. So this child, young adult, old adult, I don't know, this character has other relationships with other people, like my neighbor, right? Like my work colleagues, like my project that I'm gonna face this afternoon. Those are all different frames. So now let's look at what thinking styles describe. And here's the way that we're going to subvert the racist capitalism in the world, right? Okay. It describes groups of people, certainly, but it's not tied to demographics. So often we make the shortcut of saying oh yeah, all of the elderly are going to behave this way and think this way. all of the people who have brown skin are going to behave this way and think this way. And that's not true. They are as individual as any other human on this planet. They're as individual as any other being on the planet. And what we're interested in is if we can get to their inner thinking, their emotional reactions, and their guiding principles as they're addressing that framed purpose, that intention that they had, then we're going to see patterns. So it's patterns that we see across people. And it's the little standout patterns. People will have a lot of thinking in common. It'll be a wash all over the place. But there will be like a few little inner thoughts, concepts about personal rules that'll differentiate one group from another group. Okay, so hold on to that because I want to talk about how we use these later. So what we were looking at in that first comic was the thinking style of give my parent dignity and agency. I want them to have a say in everything that's going to go on in how they recover from this situation. And that is a product of my relationship with this person. Let's move into another thinking style. On day 8, now we realize we need to change thinking styles and push past resistance because those therapy bands are still on the shelf where I left them. So, Mom, have you been doing your therapy? I need to sort of encourage her to do it. Here are your bands. And Mom's all like, I am disgusted. I don't want to do it. It doesn't, I don't know how to do it really without making it painful. And so I double down on the push past resistance. Okay, so if you're going to get off the sofa, if you're going to recover, because I know you don't like being on that sofa all day long. You want to get out. You want to go to the park, something like that. How about we do the exercises together? And if you make it through, I'll bring you your favorite hamburgers. Okay. Pushing past resistance with a little reward at the end. And so Mom's trying to do it and talking about where it hurts and I'm talking about how is it going to take your weight again if you don't do the exercises and get past that pain? So we're doing the exercises together and then, yay, here's the hamburger. Okay, then what happens? Well, around day 17, you show up and Mom is still on the sofa and she hates being on the sofa and she's afraid she's going to be in this room and she's spiraled down into that place where it feels like you can't change your life, that you're stuck. You also have spiraled into that place. Yes, it's real and it's important to recognize as a thinking style. I have worked with so many teams who've created personas and then hated on one of the personas. Okay, raise your hand if you've been in that situation. Yeah. And then that persona doesn't get any support. That persona is ignored. And that persona will never be supported. It'll get built into the system, and systemically they will be discriminated against. That's how it works. So let's actually share the mindset, make it real. Their pain is real. They can't take it any longer. Mom can't take it any longer. So if you're not going to do your physical therapy, blah, 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 I'm going to get in an argument, they're not having a good day, I have to get out of here. This is real. This happens all the time. If we don't recognize it and embrace it and support it, this person will never be supported. This will continue to be a way of being in the world that is frowned upon and judged. And we judge people a lot. And we don't want to as designers. This is how we subvert the capitalism. We're not going to allow this person to be unsupported and go into oblivion. So here's the person leaving. I don't even care how you get lunch. I just can't care right now. This is a valid thinking style. Okay? I'm going to name the thinking style by something that I would say about myself in that situation when I'm in this thinking style. Okay, ordinarily thinking styles don't shift quite this fast. You may shift your thinking style, like if you have a completely different purpose that you framed, like find a school for my child, you're not going to shift your thinking style quite as quickly as this necessarily. Okay, so eventually the caretaker gets back to the original, but there is another comic. I'm going to make you go to my website and find it, just so that you can have closure on that whole thing. But the idea is that why are we using thinking styles? We're using them so that we can measure. Giles was talking about measurement. Kat talked about measurement. How do we measure? What do we measure? What can we measure that's going to make our stakeholders realize that we have some interesting knowledge that they will really benefit from? So what you see here is a mental model skyline. Across the top, those towers, looks like city skyline, towers in a city, those hold that inner thinking, the emotional reactions, and those personal rules as patterns of focus and mental attention across all the people that we listen to about taking care of their parent when they couldn't hire somebody. Okay? Underneath it are the things that our organization is doing in support of these people. And underneath that are the spark lines. How do we get the spark lines? This is measurement that is not quant. This is measurement that's up our alley. This is done by framing vertically our evaluative studies by what's going on in a tower, making sure we recruit each of the thinking styles in enough numbers to get good patterns out of the data. It's qual data. Listening deeply to them as they are using these tools and noticing who is not being supported. Look, the team has hated on avoid the stew. They're not getting good numbers. I put this in front of my stakeholders, and the stakeholders are like, okay. Yeah, we might have to convince them to love the avoid the stew people, but this is where we have a foothold. Oftentimes, we'll end up with thinking styles that don't necessarily have a version that's so ripe for judgment by the team. So this is the powerful place. This is where we can measure how well what we're doing actually makes a difference for a person in that thing, that frame that they're trying to address. So as an avoid the stew, how am I going to take care of my parent even though we're having this, right? I still need to take care of her. We still can't afford someone. I can't leave her there without lunch. How do I do this? Wow, that's something we can solve. So that's powerful. This is all done without demographics. And this is the other use of your thinking styles, is communicating what these thinking styles are about so that we can get creative and get communicated across the org the ideas, and maybe even source more ideas from people outside our department, make relationships with other people, and communicate in terms of stories. Now, these are stories about people addressing that particular framed thing, that intention. And when we do this way, we can show that we have a lot more opportunity. The image that's on the very first slide, the title slide, was the idea that we've got cracks in our market. The avoid the stew people have no support, and yet we think of them as our market. So we're actually growing our market within our market. We're recognizing who's missing. The other thing is that when you tell stories, you need characters. Now, how many people have been on teams or been in orgs where people made up personas? Yes, okay. What's happening there is that people want to make characters. Inventing characters is valid. You got to do it based on the thinking styles, but we have to have characters. The other thing is that oftentimes the character will just like not represent one of the thinking styles and just be in like a user journey and doesn't interact with any other characters. How many people watch TV? Okay, all right, yes. We know how stories work. We know how characters interact. We can make TV shows with our characters. We can keep these characters the same cast for all our stories. We have many stories to write. I know people who hire screenwriters within their orgs to help with this. It is very powerful. This is also a beautiful thing for the future of our own careers, especially if we have a storytelling bent. But these personas, don't harsh on the people inventing the characters. Characters are great. We just need to invent them based on the thinking styles. And here's a trick. Make two characters of the same thinking style with different demographics. Here's where the demographics can come in. Make two different characters of different thinking styles of the same demographic. Okay? Ha! Now we can trick people. This is where I made the execs who thought only women did laundry pay attention to the man who was doing laundry, right? Anyway, so this is storytelling. This is the beautiful use that we can have for actually being able to build support for different thinking styles and fill in those cracks. Subvert the capitalistic system, because we're looking at people, as mind to mind, as individuals, as humans. We're celebrating that humanity. We're recognizing what the slight, variety of approaches there are, and then we're supporting the variety of approaches. We're showing our stakeholders what the measurements are by variety of approach. And we're encouraging them to be able to change what we're creating in a way that speaks to the bottom line. Okay, that's what I had to say. I have a book out there. The most recent book is called Time to Listen, that teaches you how to find inner thinking, emotional reactions, and guiding principles. It's very powerful. Everybody who's ever done it, everybody who's ever been in a course with me or in a practice group with me is like, this is changing my life. So I do a lot of work trying to help people learn how to do this. This is something that you don't necessarily have to have permission from your boss to do. You can just do it and start getting those results and working with it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Indi, so much for walking us through that. I have a few questions myself, but maybe I'll save them for later. Let's see if there's any questions right now from the audience.
Oh no, it's one of those talks. There we go.
Max in the front.
Thank you very much. I can tell you, I read one of your books and it has changed my life. Now I feel more secure doing user interviews. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that. Mm-hmm. To find out a thinking style, how many people do you need to listen to?
Yeah, there's formulas that I teach in my Framing Your Study course. Depends on the size or breadth of your frame. And it depends on what knowledge you need. So there's a lot of variables that go into an equation that help you understand what number. If you have a very narrow frame, like maybe caretakers taking care of their parent because they don't have any money, that's, I don't know, kind of a medium frame perhaps, because you could narrow it down more about relationship with that parent. But maybe that's a medium frame, and maybe you would need 15, 20, 25 listening sessions, something like that. There's a lot of other things that go into it, because when we recruit, we also look at other attributes that we want to pull in. And I talk about all of that in the Framing Your Study course, and I do have it a little bit in the book, because it's so important to learn how to frame. Framing is, sometimes it takes, like one client, it took us 3 months to frame a study. Obviously, we weren't in a hurry. But it can take a lot of effort to frame a study, and then a lot more effort to figure out about recruiting. And then we also go to the effort of doing a little intro session with every candidate before we set up a listening session. And it gives us a really great way to develop trust so that we can get deep. I've had people do an experiment where they do it without the intro session and with the intro session. And even though it takes more time, it's like so much more valuable that they're always going to do it. Yeah. Other questions?
Over there
Hi,
in
yes.
the back.
Hi, it's Flo. Thanks for your talk. I would be curious at what stage of the design thinking process this methodology is going to take place, or if on the, let's say design thinking, let's say the horizontal lane, there are more places where you can adapt this kind of concepts that you just showed.
Yeah. So the design thinking, jobs to be done, any sort of development method, this is where you use the data. Where you create that knowledge is in the strategic space. So there's, the solution space, there's the problem space, there's the strategy space in between. So we're doing it in the problem space, getting it into the strategy space so that it informs what we're doing in our creativity process and testing. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Indi. Yes. I think we'll wrap it up to move on to Emma, but thanks so much for being with us once again.